Alright, let's talk about a piece of JavaScript that can seriously level up your code's readability, the switch statement. We're going to see how it takes messy, confusing logic and turns it into something clean, elegant, and way easier to understand. So, if you've been coding for, more than a few days, you've definitely run into these long, sprawling chains of if, else. They work, sure, but man, they can be a real pain to read and debug. Just look at this thing. It's trying to figure out which browser you're using. And as you add more browsers, more conditions, this chain just gets longer and more tangled. It's a mess. You start to think, there has to be a better way, right? Well, there is. And that's where the switch statement comes in. It is purpose-built for this exact scenario, when you have one single value that you need to check against a whole list of possibilities. The big idea here is really simple. A switch statement just gives you a cleaner and more descriptive way to handle those multiple options. Instead of that long list of if checks, you get this really neat structured block of code that tells you exactly what it's doing at a single glance. So how's it work? Well, it's got a few key ingredients. First up, you have the switch keyword, and in parentheses, you put the thing you're testing. Then you have one or more case blocks. Each case is a potential value you're checking for. If you get a match, the code for that case runs until it hits a break. And that break is super important. It tells the code to stop and exit the entire switch block. And if nothing matches at all, the optional default case swoops in as a fallback. Let's watch it work. In this example, the variable a is 4. The switch statement starts at the top. Does a equal 3? Nope, it moves on. Does a equal 4? Yes, we have a match. So it runs the code inside, which pops up an alert saying exactly. Then it hits that break statement and boom, it's done. It completely skips the rest of the block. Clean, right? Okay, I've said that word break a few times now, and for good reason. It is probably the most crucial part of a switch statement, and it's also the part that trips people up the most. Forgetting it doesn't just cause an error, it causes some really weird behavior. See, if you don't have a break, the code doesn't stop after a match. It just keeps on going. It falls through to the next case and runs that code too, and then the next one, without even checking if they match. This little quirk is called fall through. And this comparison says it all. Over on the left, with the break statements in place, the code works perfectly. It finds case 4 and it stops. But look at the right side. Without break, it finds the match at case 4, runs that code, and then it just plows right ahead, running the code for case 5 and even the default case. This shows you just how vital that break is for controlling where your code goes. But here's where it gets really interesting. This fall through thing, it isn't just a bug waiting to happen. Once you understand it, you can actually use it on purpose to do some pretty cool stuff. That's right, you can deliberately leave out the break to group multiple cases together. This is an awesome trick for when you have a few different inputs that should all result in the exact same action. For instance, what if we want the same thing to happen whether our variable a is 3 or 5? Easy. We just stack case 3 right on top of case 5 with nothing in between. No code, no break. We're basically telling JavaScript, hey, if you see a 3, just fall through and do whatever case 5 does. It's a super concise way to handle that logic. And don't just take my word for it. This isn't some weird hack. It's a fundamental part of how Switch was designed. As the source material puts it, this ability to group cases is a direct side effect of how the whole system works without a break. Okay, before we go any further, there is one more critical detail you absolutely have to know about Switch. When it compares values, it uses a strict equality check. For you JavaScript folks, that means it's using the triple equals. And what that means is both the value and the type have to be identical. Take a look at this table. Let's say a user types 3 into a pop-up box. To JavaScript, that's a string. So when the switch statement compares the string 3 to the number 3 in case 3, it says, no match. The values look the same to us, but the types are different. This is a super common mistake, and the code will just skip right down to the default case. Alright, we've gone through all the mechanics, so now let's put it all together and do a direct head-to-head comparison between switch and if with some real code. Remember that messy browser check from the beginning? Look at them now, side by side. On the left, the switch statement is just immediately clear. You can see we're checking the browser variable, and here are the clear, distinct outcomes. The if-else if chain on the right is just so much noisier, especially with those grouped OR conditions. The switch just wins on readability, hands down. And here's another classic example. That series of separate if statements on the left can be beautifully refactored into the much cleaner switch statement on the right. See how that if A equals 2 or A equals 3 maps perfectly to our grouped cases? It's the exact same logic, but the switch presents it in a way that's so much more organized and intentional. So what's the bottom line here? It's not that switch is always better than if, but for its very specific job, checking one value against a list of options, it is almost always the cleaner, more descriptive, and frankly, more professional choice. So to wrap this all up, here's your mental checklist. Use switch when you've got one value to check against many possibilities. Always, and I mean always, remember your break statement unless you are deliberately grouping cases. Don't forget the types have to match exactly because of that strict triple equals comparison. And finally, it's pretty much always a good idea to have a default case to gracefully handle anything you didn't expect. And that is the switch statement. It's a seriously powerful tool for writing cleaner, more expressive code. So the only real question left is, thinking about your own projects, what's the first piece of code you're going to go simplify with it? Thanks for watching.